Commissioner Anderson?
Here.
Commissioner Cannell is not here yet, I don't think. Commissioner Hamilton?
Here.
Commissioner Herbert?
Here.
Commissioner Robinson?
Here.
Commissioner Thompson?
Here.
Commissioner Williams?
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Great. First order of business is approval of the minutes. They were forwarded to everybody. Is there a motion regarding the minutes?
I move.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Those are approved. Before we start business, there's one guest I'd like to introduce, Josh Boomershine. Is Josh here? Hey, stand up, Josh. Yeah. Josh is here working on Scout merit badge. Is that right?
Yes.
Great. Where are you a scout?
Over on Western Virginia.
Okay, great. Is this your first time to a KUB board meeting?
Yes.
Maybe your last. But we're glad you're here and glad you're participating. And with that, we have, going to recognize Commissioner Williams for a nominating committee report.
Thank you, Chair Anderson. Let me start off by saying I want to thank again my committee that worked with me, Commissioner Celeste and Pace here, and our Chair Bruce, and also Mendel for being there too through this whole process. This year, the nominating process for the term began in January 1, 2014. Beginning in January of this year, the online application began available on KUB website already. So the committee met in August, and advertisement ran in the News Central that month. The committee discussed and submitted the application, identified qualified applicants for interview. And the charter requires that the board provide to the mayor at least 5 nominees for each commissioner vacancy. And the nominating committee recommends that the following 6 names will be submitted, and they are as follows: Daniel Carter, Anita Lane, Melissa Parker, Sarah Pennell, Mary Linda Swartenbart, and Tybee Small. Those are the names that were submitted to the mayor for consideration, and the mayor will have the privilege to nominate from that list.
Well, we're one step ahead. We got to vote on them first, and then
Sure.
we'll submit those that get picked. But
You need a motion?
no, I don't think you need a motion. That basically comes as a motion, and Mark's going to distribute the ballots. We will vote, and then he'll announce the results.
Commissioners, just as a reminder, you do vote by written ballot. And please remember to sign your ballots when you finish voting. You may vote from those names recommended by the nominating committee or any other applicant, or you may write in an applicant if you so choose. We ask that you please vote for at least 6 candidates. And the names of the 6 candidates receiving the majority of votes will be submitted to the mayor.
Is this your all's first time voting? I will say that one year we were criticized for signing it and our names not being legible. So I hope we didn't do that.
I should have been warned in advance.
Mr. Chair, the individuals that received the majority of the votes are Daniel Carter, Anita Lane, Melissa Parker, Sarah Pennell, Mary Linda Schwartzbart, and Tybee Small.
Great. Thanks, Mark. These 6 names will be submitted to the mayor, and as Eston said, and the mayor will select one of those to the city council for their approval. They have to do that she has to do that within 45 days. And whoever is selected will take office in Robinson, in January. Any questions about the process? All right. Now recognize Linda.
Commissioners, you all are aware that we have a cash investment policy that you all pass and that we follow in the investment of public funds. Recently, the Audit and Finance Committee passed a resolution to recommend that the board make amendments to that investment policy. So I recognize Mark Walker to review that with you.
Commissioners, as Ms. Roach stated, the board has previously adopted a cash investment policy for KUB, which sets forth certain objectives, parameters, reporting requirements, and controls for the oversight of KUB's cash management activities. The investment of public funds by municipalities is strictly governed by state law. So our policy also incorporates those strict requirements and limitations of state law, some of which include the types of investments that we can enter into, the terms of those investments, and also collateralization requirements as well. Now, one of the things that the policy that the board put into the policy was to help provide oversight of the program was to establish an investment advisory committee, which includes the CFO, the manager of accounting, and some other employees appointed by the president and CEO that oversee the day-to-day activities of the investment program and provide general oversight. And one of the other duties of that committee is to review the policy annually to see if any changes are needed. And if there are, to recommend those changes to the CEO and to the board's audit committee. And that's why we're standing here today, because they have proposed some changes. Just for your information, the policy was last revised by the board back in 2004. And to put it in perspective, though the changes are recommended to the committee, any change in the investment policy must be approved by the full board of commissioners. So real quickly, just to review what changes have been proposed. Essentially, they're all housekeeping items. The more noteworthy ones I've listed on the chart, but basically we updated the list of funds that are covered by the policy. Since the policy was last revised in 2004, one of the funds covered by it is obsolete, is no longer active, so we took that out of the policy. We also put some language into the policy that for the Investment Advisory Committee meetings, that minutes be recorded, written minutes be kept and approved by the committee. So that's new as well. And then there was a recent change in state law for the listing of permissible investments. And it didn't really change anything. They just regrouped it and put in some new verbiage. And we want our policy to conform exactly to that language. So again, that's another housekeeping item. And as Ms. Roach stated, the audit committee, the proposed changes were presented to the audit committee back at their meeting on September the 10th and discussed thoroughly. And in response, the committee did adopt a resolution recommending the full board adopt a revised policy with those changes. And so Resolution 1299 essentially is, through that resolution, the board would adopt a revised policy that reflects the proposed changes and authorize the CFO to implement the policy, and also declare that the policy at all times is subject to the requirements of state law. So in the event that there was a conflict in state law or the state law had stricter requirements, our policy must conform to that. So just to make that clear. And that's all I had. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I got a question. You said there's a committee. Who was the committee?
Investment Advisory Committee,
Yeah.
which is myself and Chris Hood, Manager of Accounting, and our procurement manager also sits on that. So we meet monthly and review the investment activities.
And is there a, at any given time, is there a lot of dollars available for investment, or?
Well, this covers all of the cash that KUB has in our general fund, everything other than pension. So it's in excess of $200 million. That it's our general fund, our bond fund, our contingency reserves. In fact, at the end of August, it was about $280 million that the committee has oversight for.
Consider that a lot.
Yes, so. And so I'm not sure how to ask this, the results of the committee's decision investments are factored into the budget discussion each year. If we've invested and done well, for example.
As far as there's projections of investment income that are part of the revenue, as part of the budgeting process. Now, the policy has a whole list of reporting requirements. So every year in March, we provide a full report on investment activity performance to the audit committee of the previous calendar year.
Looking at that, and you called it housekeeping, but it didn't seem like anything was going to change significantly the way you all
No.
already do things. Is that right?
That is correct.
Any other questions? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Mr. Coley?
Commissioner Anderson,
Aye.
Commissioner Hamilton,
Aye.
Commissioner Herbert,
Aye.
Commissioner Robinson, Commissioner Thompson,
Aye.
Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Resolution 1299 is passed.
Thanks. President's report?
Commissioners, it's October, and every October we have a winter update to let you know what we believe that energy prices are going to be for the winter. So I'll recognize Sherry Ottinger for that report.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. There are two main items that I want to report to you today. One is that KUB is in full compliance with Resolution 970. And for those of you that have seen this presentation before, some of this information may seem familiar to you, but this is a required report, and we do want to give you every opportunity to ask any questions that you have about those requirements. And then the second item will be a winter bill projection. Resolution 970 was passed by the board in 1998, and it does provide purchasing authority regarding our natural gas contracting activities. The resolution authorizes us to purchase up to 160,000 decatherms per day of natural gas. And as you can see from the slide, our contracts are within those limits for purchasing. I will also tell you that operationally, we are also within those limits. Our peak day was set almost 4 years ago in January of 2010, and our peak day was 119,000 decatherms. And our storage, we have had contracts for several years at the 4.1 million decatherm level, and that is also within the requirements prescribed by the resolution. The resolution, in addition to the purchasing authority, also provides for some sales authority on a very limited basis. The main area in which that we use this sales authority comes in the form of something called capacity release. And to the extent that KUB has excess capacity on some of their pipeline contracts, we are able to release that to interested parties, and they will pay us a fee for that. Typically, this will happen during the summer months. As you are well aware, where we have the greatest need for our capacity is during the winter months with our residential base. So during the summer months, to the extent possible, we will release capacity to other parties. So during the past year, we were able to release capacity, and this saved our ratepayers approximately $160,000. This year, we have entered into 3 supply contracts. 2 of the contracts are with our Gulf Coast suppliers, ConocoPhillips and Shell Energy. This gas would come to us from the Gulf of Mexico, which you can't see on the map, but it would come up. These red lines indicate the Tennessee Gas Pipeline, and that gas would flow from the Gulf of Mexico up Tennessee Gas Pipeline, and then we have an interconnect here with East Tennessee Natural Gas, and then it flows across to KUB. Those 2 contracts are very important to us. They provide us with a lot of flexibility. ConocoPhillips, we can take up to 23,000 decatherms per day, and with Shell, we can take up to 9,000 decatherms per day. And both of those contracts were extended through October 2016. We also signed an agreement with CNX, which is also currently a supplier. They are in our Appalachian region, which is right here, and they are very conveniently located to our Saltville storage. This contract is a winter-only contract. It's for 5,000 decatherms per day, and that contract was also extended for 2 years. It runs through March of 2016. And just to give you a snapshot of our supply portfolio, again, there is Conoco and Shell and CNX. We also, in our Appalachian area, have another supplier that is winter only, and this is called EQT. We sometimes refer to them as Equitable, which is their old name. But those are our 4 suppliers. And then again, we also have our storage. here we list the maximum amount, so you will see that this number appears to exceed our contractual amount, but we would not pull the maximum from each source on any given day. So that gives us some flexibility, particularly when we may get storage ratchets at certain points during the season. Our storage is very important to us. We bring about 10 million decatherms into the KUB system each year, but 80% of that, or about 8 million, occurs during the winter months. So having that storage is very important operationally. Our goals for our hedging program, these have been the same for several years. Our main goal is to minimize price volatility. I will tell you, you'll see in the next chart, that price volatility has not been an issue in the last few years, as it has been in the past, but we do still think this is an important goal. We do hedge through our natural gas supply contracts through our suppliers, and we typically will do one hedge or price lock per month, and the term of that price lock can be anywhere from 3 months up to a year. And again,
Maybe for our newer members, explain a little bit more about how that works, the hedging part of it works.
Okay, basically what we want to do is we want to lock in and get a fixed price. And the reason that we do one lock per month is because we want to stagger the pricing. So it's kind of like you might do with your 401k. You want to purchase your stock gradually over time so that you're not being a market timer and trying to pick the right time. And it's the same way with our price locks. We're not trying to sit here and watch the market and guess what the best time is to buy and buy a lot at that particular point in time. So what we do is we buy incrementally over time, and then we layer those price locks as we go forward. So is that?
Right, thank you.
Okay. And again, talking about the price volatility, again, several of you have seen this chart before. You can see in the past we had a lot of volatility. This right here, this is Hurricane Katrina. This peak is really just demand driven. Sometimes we can explain what happens on market prices, and sometimes we can't. But definitely this area of the chart is pre-recession, and there was a lot of demand for natural gas during that time. And it was also, if you've heard about shale gas that has been found in fracking, this period was also prior to that. So now with the recession, we entered an era where we had less demand and plentiful supply. And so you can see that we have been below the $5 mark for several years. And in fact, we are pretty much hanging around the $4 mark for about the last 3 years. And that is what the forecast shows as well. So again, you might ask, why do we continue to hedge? Well, it's because we have seen prices like this, and we see, there could be upward potential. So we always want to be aware of that on behalf of our customers, and make sure that they don't ever have to pay this kind of price. To the extent that our customers have experienced any fluctuations in their bill, it's not been because of price the last several years. It would be because of consumption. And we know that the main driver behind consumption for our residential customers is weather. Last winter turned out to be normal. It started out cold in November, and we were a little concerned about bills, but then it was unseasonably warm in the middle, and then by the end of the winter, we came back to almost as perfectly normal as we could be. So our customers experienced very typical, very average usage, and their bills were average. Our projections for the upcoming winter, we always base that on normal weather. Occasionally, we may see a report from a recognized weather agency that will make a prediction that it's going to be colder or it's going to be warmer. Often as not, we will then see another report from another recognizable agency that will say something different. So we try not to pick and choose between those reports, and we just kind of stay the course and use normal as our basis for our projections. So to that end, our projections, if I can get my clicker to work, our projections for the gas bills for next winter for our residential customers, they're going to be very similar to last year. We are projecting that they will be about $2 higher. And you may recall we just had a gas margin increase and that is the reason for about $1 of that change. And the other remainder would also be for purchase gas costs. For our residential electric bills, we are projecting that those bills will be about $8 or 6% lower on average. And the reason for that is purchase power cost. That's what's driving that decrease. Because again, we're expecting the consumption to be very typical compared to last year. Obviously, even with this projection of a lower bill, we will probably still have some high bill inquiries. We will still have some customers who run into circumstances and have difficulty paying their bill. And so to that end, we will continue to communicate with our customers. Obviously, there are several avenues that we use to provide information to our customers on tips for reducing their bill. We also have a staff of customer counselors to work with those who run into difficulty and set up payment arrangements, and also to seek financial assistance for them on their bill. And last year we talked a little bit about the KUB gift card, and that was a suggestion that came to us from Commissioner Williams. And we do obviously still have that gift card in place. And we know that the Knoxville community has always been very helpful in regards to financial assistance and helping those in need. And this is definitely another way that the community can reach out to their friends and neighbors who may be having difficulty and provide a way to help them pay their bill.